Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. Jerome Guerard, been in the staffing space for, gosh, too long now. 28 years, I believe it is now. And Jason and I have some history. We built this wonderful integration inside the Bullhorn platform a number of years ago, where we were leveraging artificial intelligence, natural language understanding, and really driving through mounds of data to find the best candidates that match a rec in real time, right? In the system of record. And what was really interesting about it was very accurate, but then everybody asked, what next? Once I have the resumes attached to an order, what do we do next with that information? And I believe we finally put together something that's a really interesting answer to that question around the message. So the match is just step one, right? It's the message and understanding what happens next. At the end of the day, we want to connect jobs to people and people to jobs, right? We're always talking about candidates, we're always talking about talent, right? But this is people's livelihoods, this is their how they put food on the table. And what I really want to make sure we're doing is getting our audience, whether it's the Monster audience or your ATS audience, the right message and the way that they want to communicate, because this is their livelihood. And working with Sense as a partner here, I believe we've really come up with something that's very interesting in terms of how Sense really connects with this audience. And Jason, I hope you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and as a automation engagement platform, we're Sense, but no matter what platform you're using or what technology you're using, when we're talking about connecting people to jobs and jobs to people, well, that's where utilizing that type of technology, that type of automation really comes into play. And it's not good enough to do it manually anymore, because people want to do more with less. So have the same number of recruiters, but take your best recruiter, take that experience that they're doing by a lot of high touch communications and replicate that with automation. Now, how does that all fit in with Match? Well, guess what? If you have a really large database, or even a small database, there's always going to be a portion of that database that hasn't been touched in a period of time. So being able to leverage automation and then go ahead and use intelligent matching to say, hey, this person hasn't been active in a while, they're located in this zip code, and here's their job title. Let's be able to present them automated matches on a regular basis based on their preferences. So then with automation, you can also interact with people the way that they want to be interacted with at the time in which they interact, whether that's texting, whether that's email, whether that's a chatbot, and then when they want to.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a really cool point. I think you brought up two really good things there. First and foremost, finding the gold that's already in your database, right?
Yep.
And then you touched on something really briefly there, and it was about getting all of your recruiters to perform better, right? Yeah. Not just your top 20%, but create
all
that
about
rising
consistency.
Tide, raising all boats within your organization. And one of the things that we found at Monster is 67% of all recruiters say their job is more difficult than it was in the past, right? They have more to go through, more resumes, more jobs, and it's harder, right? There's a talent shortage right now. There's not enough people to do the work we need to do. And ironically, that percentage rate there is very similar from what we've been hearing from the Monster candidate base. 66% of candidates want to be approached through technology, not email, but through a chat capability, versus getting a phone call.
Yeah, and really that goes back to the idea of engaging how they want to engage and really when they want to engage. And I'll talk about that in a second, but really when you think about it, 67% of recruiters are saying their life is more difficult right now, right? So how do we make that better? Well, we know recruiters are going through either feast or famine, right? They either have way too many applicants for a job or they don't have enough, to actually have enough candidates to provide submissions. Well, here's the thing. If you use technology and matching, it can help on both ends, right? So we're talking about reactivating the database. So if you have automation reaching out to 20,000, 100,000 people with correct job matches, along with some other content, then you're going to have a better active pool of candidates for that famine, right? And then when you have feast, Well, use the technology in a different way. Use it for things like pre-screening, like get a chatbot to pre-screen people. So then if you have 100 or 200 applicants, you can distill that down to maybe 40 or 50 that the recruiters will go through, and really reduces their effort. But then you couple that with not just the matching, but with automation all along the way, and you can take care of a lot of the mundane tasks, the admin that the recruiters are doing, because recruiters are pulled in 1,000 different directions. So if you can get a system and automation that will go ahead and help with the sourcing, like we were talking about, or even the evaluation, when you're trying to give constant updates on where they're at, or when people are out on assignment or have just been placed. You want to do employee care, you want to do surveys, you want to do NPS scores, referral campaigns, get all that to be automated. Recruiters don't need to do that. And then even redeployment and alumni management can all be managed through automation, taking all that off the recruiter's plate, really saving them a large percentage of their day.
Yeah, that first match work that we did a few years back,
yeah.
The first client that went live with that called me up and had us add more candidates to their workflow because the recruiters were hitting their daily KPIs by 10 a.m. Right? The numbers that usually took them all day long, they were hitting them by 10 a.m., right? So we had to put more candidates in their workflow to keep them busy.
Yeah.
What an amazing impact. What's also interesting in this equation, and I think a lot of different talk sessions have touched on the disparate workflow, right? Working on a job board, looking for resumes, and going into your ATS, going into your VMS, right? So how does this bring that journey together? Talk to me a little bit about how this brings all that together.
Yeah, I mean, you saw, it's basically like a Venn diagram if you think about it. You have these two distinct processes that the candidate's going through their own process, the recruiter's going through their process. They both originate from different points, right? A candidate's upset at work or out of work and they're looking for a job. The recruiter has a job and they're looking, and those two timelines don't always correlate. So how do you make sense of this and kind of tie the two together and create consistency? Well, that's through technology, right? If you use technology and you use matching, then I'm going to sound like a broken record sometimes, but this is where engaging with the candidates the way they want, like you just mentioned, like the great number of candidates would rather engage via text or maybe chatbot, or maybe they do want a phone call. So guess what? If you have a job and we run that match, we can notify all those candidates in those various ways that they want. Or for some of the people that want to be notified via phone or have that phone conversation, we can notify the recruiters to go call them. It's super simple to kind of coordinate that coming from both angles. And if we take it on the backside, so that's great that we engage them. Well, that's us reaching out to them potentially. But what about them? What about the candidates? What about them wanting to act when they want to act? Because I know during my last job search, well, I wasn't searching during business hours because I was being worked like a dog, right? So I was 10, 11 o'clock at night, I was going ahead, and that's when I was doing my job search. And if you can provide the technology that will allow them to maybe interact with a chatbot, maybe have that chatbot be intelligent and provide them those matches so then they can apply. And then, well, great, they applied, but let's continue with the technology. Let's have that, do a pre-screen and immediately disposition that person, and assuming they're a good candidate, well, let's go ahead and allow them to schedule time and take it even a step further. So as a candidate, I'm using the technology at my convenience, and guess what? If I'm using it with your firm and it's acting like that, I feel great. I feel great because I just took like 8 steps forward. I applied, I heard about a job, I went to the website, maybe looked at a few more, applied, did a pre-screen, and then scheduled time. As opposed to, some of the other firms out there, I'm searching at 11 o'clock p.m., I submit my resume, and it's just in a black hole, and I don't hear back for days, right? And so what does that do? Well, it's great brand because they're enjoying their experience, but also shrinking that time to submit or that time to fill as well.
The other thing we talked about in this whole workflow and we kind of worked out is, hey, maybe they're not interested in a job right now, right? or that job is just the wrong job. So many candidates, they're not recruiters. They don't know all of the options. They don't know the work environment. They don't know the hiring manager. So having that option to say, I'm interested in a job, but not that job, and then providing options, I thought was absolutely tremendous. And talk about data integrity, capturing that feedback loop, getting the responses into the notes section and the activity section in your ATS. I mean, having that breadth and depth of knowledge, I think, is absolutely fantastic. And it almost becomes, I don't want to call it machine learning because that's a bit of a misnomer, but it trains the recruiter, it trains your system to just get better and richer data as time progresses, right? So how does this whole thing work? I think we put together a nice little visual here. If you wouldn't mind, just kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, so I think just extending what you just said and talking about what we're looking at here. You have a job order. What do? Well, let's not just talk about grabbing data from just your database, but maybe from third parties as well, from job boards. And then going ahead, aggregating that, and then identifying those top matches. And then taking that and going ahead and sending out that campaign, if you will. And it's not just a single email. It can be a drip campaign where we go ahead, reach out to people one time. If they don't respond, we reach out via a different communication method. It can be really flexible there. But the key is all that's being done automatically behind the scenes. So no one has to even initiate this. You can just create the job, approve it, and then all of a sudden all of that happens. Now, then we're going to go ahead and what do we do when someone comes back and applies? We're going to go ahead and pre-screen them like we talked about before. And to build on what Jerome was talking about, once we disposition them one way or the other, assuming we positively disposition them, you see the scheduling there, but the key is getting the data back in the database and getting the appropriate people notified so they can continue the recruitment process. And if we're talking about notes, well, that's great. We get that in there so it's visibility for everyone on a go-forward basis. But let's talk about the actual fields. So someone applies, you have that application. Well, let's have the automation automatically update that candidate against that job and say pre-screened, pre-screen approved, pass pre-screen. And when you do that, then someone gets notified, and then guess what? They already have a scheduled time on their calendar, so they're going to talk about it with that candidate. And then, of course, if we disposition them the other way, well, then we mark that, and no fuss, no muss. You don't have to waste your time with that candidate, but we did give them a great experience. So we did let them down softly, so you still retain great brand recognition because you're giving immediate feedback. And once again, all of this going through automation, I can't say it enough, and I have plenty of case study examples of reducing the time to submit and the time to fill, which is ultimately what everyone's looking for, to do more with less, because if you can decrease that, then you have more time to do other things. Become that closer as a recruiter, not that administrator.
Well, and also this workflow forces adoption, right? You don't have to say to your recruiters, hey, I want you to search the database first. Right? Let's try and find a candidate that we already have. Let's not go spend money on job boards right away. This forces that behavior.
Exactly.
A great way to have offer change management, right? So it's really, to sum it all up, cleaner data, right? More relevant data, faster time to submit, really hitting KPIs, having that redeployment variable in there as well, getting that candidate who's about to come off bill and get them into the next rec and presenting new options, right? And the decreased spend, right?
It's all about making people more efficient, but also providing that better experience, because you can make as much money in the world if you could put people together on placements, but if you do it in a way in which a candidate doesn't like, or is abrasive, then they're not coming back, right? And if you're doing contract staffing, it's all about the redeployment. So you want to make sure that people have as great experience as possible.
Right, yeah, well said. So if anybody wants to talk this through further, or you're intrigued by the concept, swing by our booth. I know time is limited, people are taking off to get back home, but thank you very much for your time. Hope we can have a follow-up.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.